Welcome back, everybody. Got another episode of me with me and BJ. We're going to get into some topics that have popped up over the last few months. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday. Got some travel in, got some relaxation, time with the kids, whatever it is. BJ, I'm glad you're on with me, buddy.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Glad to be back.
I love it. So we're just going to jump right into it. On one of the last episodes, Mo and she asked me my opinion on body cameras, and I gave it. But I have limited experience with body cameras, and I figured you have been using it longer than I have. And I wanted to ask your opinion on body cameras, good, bad, ugly, positive, negative, whatever you got.
So body cameras were one of those things that when they got introduced, it's, I guess you say double-edged sword in the sense of, there was obviously some pushback from people using it. Obviously the public really wanted it, and it does serve a purpose, a very, very good purpose. It serves the purpose of, you have that transparency from the public that they're looking for, obviously a record of what actually happened. And in most cases, in my experience, it's actually saved a lot of people from complaints, from, allegations of misconduct and that kind of thing. Now it's one of those things where it's, I say if you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't have anything to worry about. And that's true. But it is, on the other side, it is a little bit invasive because it is always, like they say, they say it's not always recorded, but if the ways, the ones that we work, if it always goes back a minute from when it actually starts recording, whether that's through drawing your firearm, pulling out your taser, activating your emergency equipment, if it always goes back a minute, then that means it's always recording, right? It's just always recording, but just not with the sound.
Right.
So it is invasive in that sense because it is always on. And now, obviously, while you're working in contact with the public, that's fine. That's exactly what it's there for. But when you're having those moments where, you're maybe taking a private phone call or, having a private conversation or, just eating your lunch or, getting a text message with your significant other or something like that, or with the kids or whatever, does that really need to be on the recording all the time, So that's the opposite side of it that I can speak to. And, how it is in law enforcement. It is, as we learned from Sharo, it is a fishbowl constantly all the time. So I don't necessarily know if people understand what that's like. On the other side of, when you're going to the aquarium, hey, it's real nice to look at the fish, but you get to walk away. The fish are always in there,
Yeah.
And everything that they're doing, you have constant view of. So I'm not quite sure if people have that or are used to that. I mean, we're used to it now. It's because that's just the way you've been living, and it's a little bit different now. But so I will say it is good, especially when you have those audits. I mean, it is a learning tool as well when you can actually go back and write the reports. But okay, you can sit down and watch it back. But oh, yeah, that's right. They did say this. Oh, that's right. They didn't quite say this, they said this exactly. So it does help in the sense that you're able to go back and look at it and maybe critique yourself, critique your performance, critique how you could be a better cop, how you could speak better or do better interviews. So it does serve a very good purpose in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to add something I left off when Mo asked me the question is, like with most things, law enforcement gets a new tool, everyone's excited about it, and then it just becomes an additional step that most cops, deputies, whatever, have to use. In my mind, if you got a body camera going on, let me back it up. Cops spend more time doing paperwork, typing up reports, getting critiqued on reports, criticized for reports, and it's also hard to explain inflection, posturing. Like, there's a lot of things that go into writing a report. My thing is, if you have it all recorded and you see it's all recorded, you might need to do a synopsis, like, hey, this is what led us to this is why I'm here, or whatever, because that might not be on the camera. But the audio video recording should be the report. That would be a step that you wouldn't have to take. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours and days I've spent writing reports on, different cases or whatever, that you get bogged down in the minutia, and it's like, well, did he say that? Did he not say that? And now you basically have to review the entire incident, look at it and be like, oh, okay. And then you have to describe what was the environment, what was the setting. I can remember there was a sergeant in Hillsborough who, she came from detective squad, so she had this thing, and you show up to an overdose call, and you type up your report, you do the whole thing, and she's like, well, what was the AC set at? What was the temperature of the room? I'm like, what? She overdosed on whatever. It's like, I don't know. I did not check the air conditioning temp of the house. And like the type of criticisms that you would get, where if you have the body cam going, you can walk around, check all the boxes, whatever it is that might be deemed important, and let the video and the audio and the video, speak for itself, so to speak. I don't know of an agency that uses it in that manner. Again, it's just like an attachment to the report. So you do the incident, you type it up, spend a couple hours typing it up, gets through supervisors, then you add the video to it. That kind of stuff, I think, is something that law enforcement hasn't explored thoroughly.
Yeah, this is something that when we found out we were getting it, something that I thought about. So probably one of my first initial thoughts and questions about it was, how are we going to house this? How are we going to store this? Now, again, for the company, because, now you got to pay them to keep all the recordings, right?
Yep.
I do think it is an attachment. I don't know if it should necessarily be just the whole thing. I think sometimes it's easier just to read the report, and then if there's an issue, to go back with it. I mean, yes, I do. I get your point. And in some cases, it should literally just be that. Like the Tony Rodapoli kind of reports.
Yeah.
But as you put it, it is hard to articulate some of the minutiae, like you said, of certain things through text, if you're not that type of creative writer, right? Most guys are not. You and I both have master's degrees, so we've written a lot of papers and understand, language and how to articulate and how to kind of paint the picture. Some things you don't necessarily need to paint a picture of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I said, Tony wrote a plenty report, I saw Batman, arrested Batman in report, she those kinds of reports like a warrant, you know what I mean? Like there's really not much to a warrant report. Like, hey, came in contact with the guy, read his stuff, had a warrant, take him to jail. Boom, simple, right?
Yeah.
But some of these other things where it's like, hey, I'm doing this interview, and I could just kind of tell through his body language that he was lying, or he was being deceptive, or he was posturing to run away from me, or like you said, that is hard to. It's hard
articulate. Yeah.
It's hard to articulate in a manner that everybody will understand exactly what you're saying and what you were seeing at that moment in time, right? Because
correct.
If you say posturing, to me that looks like something. To you that looks like something different. You know what I mean? It's hard to capture that in the moment to judge.
Yeah.
So that's where that in those cases, that's where the body cam is important, because that's the kind of shit that you need to like. I can't explain. Hey, he balled his fist. Okay, well, did you ball his fist because it's cold outside? That was about to punch you? Like, it's hard to say. So correct. I think, in that case, it's better to obviously have it. And then again, like, how long are you going to keep the body cam for?
Well, yeah, and that's a whole another thing, because you got to pay for that. So my angle is more efficiency with your time, especially if you're a street cop. Again, with the understanding that law enforcement, they can take your freedom away. So it should be taken seriously. There should be effort that's put into it. But two different scenarios come to mind that I dealt with personally is like, you'd go to the Walmart right there in Tampa, and you'd arrest somebody for stealing. Hey, this guy caught him running outside the store with these items. That's stealing. Done. All right. That report could take you 4 hours, because you have to itemize each. I mean, I remember trying to kind of cheat a little bit. I was like, hey, can you just ring this all up on a receipt? And that way I could just say, hey, boom, see the attached receipt. That's the items. This was the total amount, blah, blah, blah. Sergeants didn't like that. They wanted to see it in the report, itemized out. I'm like, oh my God. And again, you still have to the security footage, he entered the store. It's so tedious and monotonous. But then fast forward, I remember another case where I was assisting a probation officer and walking to the house, and it was a meth lab. Basically, they were cooking meth in the house. We arrived, a bunch of people scatter. The mom and the father and the mother of 3 kids, the kids were in the house, and it's like I spent 11 hours out of a 12-hour shift on that one case, because it's like you got to call DHS, you got to arrest the parents, you have to call the meth lab people to come clear that out, because there's chemicals and shit everywhere, and you have to write all those. It took me 11 hours to write that shit. And he's like, "Hey man, what have you been doing? You had one call the entire shift." And I'm like, "Sir, do you want to come down here?" And then there was actually another one where it was like the Lord of the Flies one, where we had a rampant, petty theft, just bullshit. And it was a group of juveniles. I shouldn't call them. They weren't actually a gang. They were a group of juveniles. And they were basically taking over this apartment complex that was abandoned, and they were like running power. There was a shitload of stolen stuff. Detectives that one took probably 10 hours. We had a bunch of runaways. We had people with warrants. It was chaos. And one call took one deputy off the road the entire shift for one call. It's like, how can we be more efficient with what we're doing?
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I can't sit here line by line and say, hey, these are the policies we need and this is how it would fix it. But these are the thoughts I have when using tools that law enforcement has.
Yeah. Just small interjection on your point, because I think it's different now, and especially with the body cam stuff, right?
Yeah.
Being on the other side of it and knowing a couple people who work in state attorney's office and, doing some detective stuff and TUI stuff, seeing the backside of it, the itemizing stuff, they didn't always have access to our evidence and to our report. Like the only thing that they weren't getting was the report.
Yeah.
And then you would have to bring the actual evidence to court. You would have to send them the stuff. Hey, did you get this? Hey, I saw you. And so back then I get it. It's because all of our stuff didn't talk back and forth. So,
oh, bro.
So yeah, you gotta itemize, because if you just say, $500 of the stuff, yeah, of course, but they still want to see that, but they didn't have a way to look at it. So it's a lot better now, because now they have, you barely have to talk to the state attorney at all. They can just go and look at it, which, like we just said, it's a lot easier when they can just go look at it because it's there.
Well, that leads into what got me into the most trouble when I started the probation thing, or actually we did until you went to school resource, but whatever. Mm-hmm. There was a misunderstanding of what was going on, and I don't know how long law enforcement acted under the capacity or the thought that, under the assumption, I should say, they thought that whenever they did a probation check, it was going right to the probation officer. That's what we were told. That's what we did. We followed all the rules. And then I would say, hey man, I'd go talk to PO. I was like, I've caught this guy in violation 3 times. I've written all these reports. Why haven't you violated him yet? He's like, what are you talking about? What reports? There was no system and mechanism where they were automatically getting those reports. There was nothing in place. And that caused a whole bunch of strife. Because I'm like, this is stupid. We should fix it. Well, I had to go talk to majors and IT, and basically I had to tell them, hey, what you thought was working is not working. And they're like, who the fuck is this deputy telling me how to do my job? I was like, well, what you're doing isn't working, so fix it.
You got your PD spanked for that one.
Yes, I did. And I remember also saying, yeah, this system we have is fucked up. And the guy was like, oh, well, tell me how it's fucked up. And then come to find out, he's the one that created the system. Whoops. Whoops. Yeah. Yeah. The whole I think it's getting better now, but 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't like that. Criminals would be like, yeah, man, I know you know who I am. I'm Billy, whatever. You know my whole history. And I'm like, I don't know shit about you, bro. If you ain't been arrested in Hillsborough, I have no idea who the fuck you are. I have no idea what you've been up to, because it didn't work that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, insane. So in light of some of the recent stuff going on, the violence, I try not to get too political on this, but with all the shit that's going on, all the security threats, a lot of people were interested when I talked to Mo about some of the steps she's taken as a parent to work with her school. But you were actually in school resource, and I have some opinions as well on how to better protect our schools, security measures we could take.
Yeah, man, that was so. it's so funny now that some of the things that they're working on, where I currently work now, are, you know, everybody has access to the keys. You go through all of these trainings, and every deputy needs to know where the master keys are. Everybody needs to know how to get in the school. There's maps to the school. The schools are on the maps. There's, you know, and I'm like, this is a project I was working on, and I had the whole action plan for it. I was like, I think every deputy should have a master key to every school.
Yeah.
So we're not working on the assumption of like, hey, now I got to go find the keys. And like, everybody should have at least a master key to the front of the school. And this is a project I worked on when I was there. We took pictures of everything. I mean, so, you know, hey, this is every door. This is every, you know, but again, the system wasn't created for you to be able to look it up, you know, in the most efficient way. It was like, it was there, but it wasn't probably the most efficient way. And obviously, after the whole Parkland thing and all these things that keep happening, you know, not to say that people didn't take it seriously back then, you know, but it is a lot more serious now. And even when you were there, when we train on these things are a lot different now. Nobody's waiting to go in, right? So you train on the one person entry, the 2-person entry, you know, whoever gets there first, you're going in, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're not trained on hey, we're going to wait for this and do that. And nobody's doing that anymore. So the safety concerns, even when our child used to be there every day, I was like, man, even just from, I'm 38, right? So I remember going to middle school, or not middle school, elementary school in the 90s. I recently drove by my old elementary school, probably sometime last year. And I was showing it to somebody. I was like, oh, this is where I went to elementary school. And I'm like, wait a minute, this looks drastically different than when I went there. I was like, when I went there, we had no gates. There were campus was open. It was in like a tiny neighborhood, and it was like connected to a county park. So like anybody could just be in the park, which was like across the field from the school. And none of these schools had like gates. None of these things were blocked up access. And not to say that schools look like prisons, but every school is now the gates everywhere. Everything's locked, cameras. But and again, unfortunately, this is the way that it has to be because of all the things that are happening. But that is probably the biggest concern is how do you keep people safe from, I guess, you know, from the community, from the environment. But that's not even like, I guess we said the scary part of it. It's the people who already have access, who are already behind the security, if you will. You know what I mean? Like we talked about this before. How do you account for, I guess, attacks from within, right? Like, how are you going to stop or account for a kid who goes to the school, who's supposed to be there,
Yeah.
who has nefarious purposes that nobody knows about? That's the most dangerous thing, not necessarily, in my opinion, that's the most dangerous thing that you can't, because the most dangerous thing is the things that you can't account for. Right?
Yeah.
You can't account for that. Like, I can account for, hey, we put up these 10-foot walls and there's cameras outside and there's every door is locked and there's panic buttons and all that kind of stuff. It's like, but it's the unknowns that are still out there that you have a hard time adjusting for.
Yeah. And I was, well, I don't know how to phrase it. Fortunate, unfortunate, however you want to phrase it. So the Parkland High School, this was 6 years after the event. I was working with the Secret Service, and it was a site for Vice President Harris at the time. And they walked me through the day of the event. I saw the building where everything happened. They walked me through how everything happened. And the chaos and the horror, like you couldn't even begin to express what the families that were there, things like that. But also in my mind, because I think at that time, I think I'd already gotten out. I wasn't a deputy anymore. I can't remember where I was. But there was a lot of steps security-wise that they have now implemented that I was surprised hadn't been implemented. And I'm also shocked that it's still not implemented across every school in the U.S. So a few things. So the shooter entered through the building. He walked through the parking lot. The school security, which were, you know, teachers, volunteers, coaches, whatever, on golf carts, that kind of a thing, which is how I grew up. They saw and they recognized him as a student, but he had actually already graduated. And he was carrying something. They're like, hey, this is weird. And they were there was a delay in communication. He's able to enter the building externally, walks in, pulls his firearm or his rifle out, goes to the first floor. That's where a lot of carnage was, but he's shooting into all the classrooms. The second floor heard the shots, and the teachers locked all the door. Everybody hid away from the door. And so there were no deaths on the second floor because they could hear the shots. The third floor, because of all the dust, the concussion from the firing of the rifle, it set off the fire alarm. So they thought it was a fire. So they started pouring into the hallways, and that's actually where most of the deaths occurred, on the third floor. And he basically works his way through the third floor, gets to the end. He's trying to fire out the window. They had hurricane windows, so they're not bulletproof, but they're rugged.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't remember the number, and somebody who knows the ins and outs of this will be like, hey, he fired this many rounds. He fired several rounds. None of them went through the glass. He gets frustrated, drops the gun, and then he walks out, and he's able to just slip in with the crowd, and he ends up going to like a McDonald's and later gets caught. But the way everything kind of went down, the administrators are trying to call 911. Law enforcement's coming. They don't know where everything's at. Hey, they're in building 3. Well, that doesn't mean anything to anybody if that's not your area, your zone, your school. You don't know what that means.
Exactly.
So some of the stuff that they put into effect, and they're trying to put it in effect nationwide, which I think is great, is the schools have cameras now. Now local law enforcement can view those cameras, which wasn't the way it was before. Now they can, so you can see what the hell's going on, what went on, where it's at. You can triangulate. You can guide your officers better. Number 2, they're able to externally lock all the doors so you can't come in, but you can still get out. And then there's still a breakdown, because it was a conversation. I had this conversation for like 2 hours with the principal and the vice principal. I was like, the way the Secret Service handles fire alarms, especially with our protectee, if we're somewhere that's not a secure building, a hotel, an office building, whatever, we don't just rush out. Because people pull fire alarms all the time to cause chaos. We actually will harden up. Agents will go, hey, where's this working with the fire department, work with them, where's this coming from, assess whether it's a real fire or not, and then adjust from there. 99.9% of the time, it's not a fire. It's just somebody pulling the alarm, trying to cause chaos, whatever. So these are things that possibly could have, if these steps would have been implemented, especially locking the external doors, law enforcement able to see the cameras, what's going on, what does the suspect look like? Because it was chaos for days.
Yeah.
Trying to identify a teenage shooter in a high school full of teenagers.
Exactly.
And again, keep in mind, when I grew up, we had an open campus. It was modular. We would walk in and off campus. People would come and go. There was no real security in that front. It was mostly just trying to make sure kids don't dip out of class. There was no thought of somebody coming on to the campus trying to do any harm. Now, with that being in effect now, again, this is not nationwide. This is just at the school. I did see what you're talking about, where they had the box of the master key. It was in a box, and the fire department and law enforcement officials had the code to get it, and then you could pull the master key and get in. I think that's also a good idea. But so there's all these steps that you could take to secure a campus. Again, and still, you don't have to make it look like a prison, but you need to control who's going in and out. And like what you were saying, you even sometimes have the threat from within. Well, this way, hey, we got something going on. The local law enforcement officer, agency can switch over to the cameras and see what's going on.
Yeah. I mean,
so that yeah, go ahead.
There's no way to prevent every single scenario from happening, Yeah. But and again, unfortunately, it's a necessary thing you have to talk about. You have to go through, you have to train for, just because the times that we live in. It's unfortunate that you have to talk to your kids about this, and this has to be a thing. It's concerning, but I mean, I guess if you don't, you gotta have to prepare for it.
Well, people act like it's just the most heinous thing that's ever existed, but my parents remember having to do inbound nuclear warheads striking when they were in high school. They would say hide under your desk. I'm like, well, they ain't gonna do shit if it's a nuke. But again, these were thoughts that they had during their time frame.
Yeah.
So there's always something, and again, schools and our children are the most vulnerable. So it's a great target for creating terror and mayhem. It's also an easy target, unfortunately, or it was, for people who just want to do violent shit. Unfortunately, I think that ties in nicely to technology and law enforcement. And I think it's especially pertinent today with the drones talk and the types of things that they're talking about with the Secret Service, with armor and robots and drones and the guns and the cars and all this other stuff. But my opinion is typically law enforcement is 20 to 30 years behind the power curve from what's actually out there. It's mostly due to cost, but also there's training, and you still have to abide by the law. And I'm going to kick it to you in a second, but I'm reminded I remember being taught this, and maybe you can clarify it. I can't remember exactly, but Hillsborough County, and I thought it was a great way. They were this is when marijuana was a big deal and everybody was having problems with grow houses in Florida. And they would use helicopters, and they would do, I think, thermal cameras, and they'd say, hey, that house is burning a lot hotter, like exponentially hotter than all the other ones. They're sucking up power. And they would that would be enough for them to get a search warrant and go say, hey, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah.
Most of the time it was a grow house, but not every time. And now you've just invaded this dude's house because he's whatever. You know, he's got a garden in his basement. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not doing anything illegal. So that kind of was taken away as a tool. Facial recognition, when that started coming out, they were trying to put that on basically every street light, camera light, whatever. Hey, that's a violation of my privacy. You can't be reading my face just because I'm driving. I'm not a bad guy. Why am I going to be in your database? So you still need to be able to maintain law and order, but you can't violate people's civil rights.
Yeah. Yeah. You know how I feel about that. I'm very big on that. Not being, I mean, obviously we all know Big Brother's always watching and listening. It is, like you said, that's a tough thing to navigate. Because like you said, people want to have their privacy. And at the same time, it's like when things happen, well, how come you guys didn't know who this was? Right?
Yeah.
You didn't know this was coming, you couldn't see it, So I'm like, there's a, not necessarily give and take, but there is a fine line between, using technology and also having it be used against you.
Yes.
And again, it's like I lean to the side of, I like to have my, privacy and anonymity and things like that. But at the same time, it's like, I get why people probably would want to give that up, and it's not necessarily because you're doing anything wrong or not, but like you said, it's like, I'm not doing anything. So why are you capturing my stuff? Now, I say that to this. I think we're all doing it unconsciously anyway. I was like, if you wear an Apple Watch, if you left, open your phone with, with your face or whatever, it's like, they already got it. They already got it, right? Now, whether or not they want to, allow the government to use it to identify people and do certain things, it's like, when things happen, it's like, yeah, it's nice to be able to have that option to use it. But just on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I get why people would be a little bit concerned.
Well, yeah, just from my own opinion, I'm like vehemently opposed to traffic cameras and also the bullshit giving you red light tickets. My opinions on that, I think it's bullshit. DC with all their speed cameras and they hide them all, they're just trying to jack you because it's like, all right, dude, I was going 60 and a 50 trying to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, really? I'm the guy. I'm the one you're looking for. That kind of shit just drives me insane. Mm-hmm. But like you said, when shit pops off and you're trying to figure out where the hell this guy is and the people are like, hey, why haven't you found this guy already? It's like, well, we are somewhat constrained because we don't have all this technology, cameras, whatever, because of your security, your privacy. Your privacy. Mm-hmm. So it's a fine line. And again, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, these are the policies we should have in effect. But at some point, you just got to recognize, look, there's drones. People have drones. Bad guys have drones. Good guys should have drones. But there comes a cost with that, right? I think you were talking about the bomb team robots, like $400,000.
Yeah.
For whatever it is. I'm sure there's more expensive, whatever, but it's like, okay, I'm using this as I'm supposed to, and then it gets blown up. Well, now we're going to buy another one? Like, how many are you going to keep doing? Yeah. At some point, it's like, hey, the cost outweighs the need here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's training. I mean, there's also additional training and all. I mean, there's just a lot to it.
Oh, for sure. the technology, brother, it is, and again, obviously me doing what I do, I probably have a little bit, not necessarily a little bit more, but probably more than like your common person, with the drones and the robotics and stuff like that. But it is costly, but it does serve a purpose, especially in what I do. That's a necessary tool, but at the same time, it's not infringing upon anybody's rights per se. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not using it. I mean, even if we use it in technical situations, it's because, something has, in essence, popped off, and now we're here because of that. We're not just using it just to go look over people's, fences and inside windows and stuff like that. But some of these other things where it's like the drones are an interesting thing, and it's essentially because it's like, I got fences up so people don't walk into my yard. But what do you do about somebody flying a drone over your fence? Not what.
Exactly. And what are their rights?
What are their rights? And what are mine? So but again, obviously, as things come out, as technology develops, you're always going to run into these scenarios or these things that bring up these questions of, what do we do? Like, first, like the body cams, right? To circle back on that with the technology stuff. People wanted body cams. I'm not against it. I'm for body cams. But one of my first initial questions was, people want these body cams. Okay, but what happens when you don't want the body cam in your house?
Yeah. Because now you'll have things out there for somebody to get it if they want it.
Exactly. So now it's public record. Like, this should all be public record. Yeah, I get it. But what happens when it is now public record and it's something that you don't want people to be out there? Now you don't control it.
Yeah. Anybody can get it if they want it.
Exactly. So now you now have been brought to the pitfall. So, for again, with the body cam, so I'm pretty sure people can run facial recognition through that and do all those other kind of things through the use of the body cams and whatnot. And so like I said, it's a double-edged sword. And people are like, oh, like, I'm recording this. I was like, yeah, so clearly so am I. I keep my volume up on my body cam super loud, so everybody knows it's on, right? That way I don't forget to turn it off. You hear it, it's recording. Everybody knows what's up. It's very loud. Well, I'm recording this, right? Yeah, some people are like, I don't want to be recorded. I was like, well, then I guess you don't want to talk to me then, because this should be recorded.
Yeah, exactly. So watch what you say.
So watch what you say. So watch what you say, Not to say that everybody has anything bad to say, whatever. But I'm like, hey, be mindful, because I think people sometimes forget. Actually, that's one of the instances where it works, in your favor as law enforcement. If people are like, oh, well, you violated my civil rights and you do this. Like, did I? Did you forget what you said?
Yeah.
So it works in that case. But the technology, again, a lot of these things don't come up until the technology catches up. And now we have to talk about, I guess, the issues that it presents and the possible issues that it could present going forward.
Yeah, and again, we keep circling back to the body cams, but I remember a call. I was helping a lady. Her house had been burglarized, so she's a victim, and it's very calm. I'm sitting there with my notepad, I'm taking notes, I'm writing, and her neighbor, well, I think like two apartments down or whatever, just come and side tackles me, and we started scrapping it up, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And he was basically, in his mind, he thought I was harassing this lady, when I'm like, dude, she's a victim. Like, I had to handcuff him, calm him down, like, bro, what the fuck is wrong? I mean, you're going to jail, like, you can't just be tackling cops out here. He's like, he goes, why are you harassing that lady? She's a nice lady. I was like, because somebody burglarized her house. Like, she's a victim. I'm trying to help her figure out who did it. And he's like, oh, my bad, man. That's how I want it. But I'm typing this report, and my sergeant's like, hold on, man. Hold on. What happened? I was like, he had nothing to do with anything. Then why'd you arrest him? He tackled me. Like, we went to the ground. I did not have body camera. We didn't have, the technology wasn't out there yet, but I was like, I wish I kind of had it, because sometimes you're like, this is some crazy shit. Like, you won't believe me unless you saw it with your own eyes.
But
So much of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. It's like, a lot of it is replaying some story. I shared them with you about when the last time I fucking ate it on the call. I was actually able to share that whole story with you. And it's one of those things. It's like, man, if that wasn't on camera, not that you wouldn't have believed it, but it only adds to the story, right?
Yeah,
Some of the
right.
stories, it's like, man, I wish somebody was recording this. I wish somebody could, because nobody will believe what just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Or how crazy that was. And I mean, and I think too, it's people can kind of see and this will probably kind of segue into some other stuff, but like I told you about this one the other day. I had a couple weeks ago where, the guy tried to commit suicide. And I'm like, it is one of those things where it's like, man, if I could just say that to you and be like, oh man, this was jacked up, right? But you're never gonna, it's hard to articulate how jacked up it is unless you see it or you have the ability to watch it. And I'm like, this guy's just, even the circumstances behind it are, obviously sad, and tragic because of what ended up occurring, but to actually watch it and see it, I don't think people understand what it's like to watch somebody die.
No, it's not normal.
Or that's not a normal thing. And see it so many times, not necessarily you're desensitized to it, but I'm like, I don't think people would necessarily understand if they didn't have the ability to watch it. And then it's like, hey, you got to work the rest of your shift.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that happened, but you still got 5 hours left. Let's go.
You still got 5 hours. And you got to talk to the family. And I'm like, man, it's like, I don't think people would believe it. Not that they wouldn't believe it. It's like you wouldn't understand to the degree unless you had the ability to look at it and be like, oh, man, like some of that guy's brain just fell out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't get used to that.
You don't get used to that. You know what I mean? And then, so, it's a challenge, but I think that kind of segues into one of the other things we're talking about was
fit for duty.
The fit for duty. You know what I mean? I think obviously the physical part is the part that stands out. Obviously, is the most immediate and the most flashing thing that you're going to see, because obviously you got to be able to physically do your job. But I don't think a lot of people talk about or put emphasis on the mental and the emotional fitness that you have to have for this job.
Yeah, and again, this is something that's popped up recently in social media and some of the news outlets talking about poking fun at some of the larger. I think they were poking fun somewhere in Detroit. They just graduated a class of detention deputies, and to say they're not fit is an understatement. And let me just reemphasize, I'm 41 years old, and I'm not like a peak physical fitness, but there comes a point where it's like, come on, man, like you got to be able to at least fit in your uniform and not have your buttons be in emergency status every time you put your uniform on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that emergency status buttons always gives me a laugh. Yeah, but it is, and I think what people don't realize in that, and again, 38 now, and I started when I was 24. Yeah, 24. I think my 25th birthday came while we were in the county. So 24, and obviously just got out, just getting out of college, obviously you're, young, and you still got your young early body. And, but I think the most difficult thing to do over the course of time and of almost 14 years of doing this is to maintain, not necessarily get it, because I think you should have it when you start, especially if you start young, is to maintain it, right? And also to maintain it while life is happening. And life is happening in a different sense of everything is high stress, right? So your work days are high stress, so half of your time is spent in high stress environment, not to mention, the stresses of life, right? So relationships, kids, work stress that comes from not necessarily like the politics of any job that you have. Life's happening around you, you lose people, you run into different kinds of trouble. And nobody's necessarily immune to it, but with the added stress of job, it makes it more difficult. And it's one thing I've obviously lucky enough to have taken the time to kind of like look back at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I went through this, I went through this, I went through this, this happened while I've been doing this happened while I've been doing this. Again, things that not everybody necessarily, nobody's immune to, but all while being able to do this job in a high stress in a high stress environment is difficult. And if you don't, and I say that to say this, I actually was lucky enough to be able to be cognizant of it while it's happening, or be able to look back at it and be like, oh man, this is actually going on. I think people kind of just go through it, not that they just go through the motions or whatever, like they don't care, but if you don't know that it's happening, it's hard to address things that you are unaware of, right? So it's the changes to your body, it makes it hard to sleep, being on just being on night shift in and of itself is stressful because it's unnatural, right?
Yeah.
Doing that for a while will make changes to your body. It's hard to adjust. It's hard to maintain. It's hard to progress. So again, I think it's one of those things that we don't probably necessarily focus on all that much because, again, cops aren't superheroes. I mean, a lot of us think we are, heroes, yes, strong, yes. I think, we both have our opinions on what men should be and what strong people should be. But, cops aren't superheroes, right? So, you're normal people, and a lot of these things are just are not normal per se,
Yeah. And it's hard to point to any one thing, but you're dealing with, the long weeks with Hillsborough. I mean, you're doing 5 12-hour days, and they're not really 12-hour days. They're more like 14-hour days. And that's if you don't have court. That's if you don't have off duty. I mean, we worked many a 17, 18-hour day. At some point, you got to sleep. So learning how to maintain, how to eat right, because that's the other thing. You're also, like you said, night shift. Well, there's only a few things open at night. A lot of it's fast food, or, you have to learn how to prep your meal. I mean, there's just a lot that comes with it. The other thing that you and I had it because you and I were buddies, but we would work out together. And that was great. But typically in law enforcement, you're an island. And I mean, listen, we're all adults. You got to be an adult. I get it. But I enjoy being able to work out with a partner or a group setting, kind of like a team, like football stuff, like you work out with your teammates. It's something that I don't have the answers. I wish we could figure it out, but it would be cool to have a non-judgmental workout with your squad mates, your team, whatever. Because typically when you're working out in a large group and law enforcement, it's usually for a test, promotion, whatever, annual fitness. It's high stress. You don't want to be embarrassed. It's kind of a lot that comes with it. And like I think you and I have talked about it before, they typically focus just on running, which always drives me insane. Because you can run all the miles you want, but when I catch you, I'm gonna rip your arm off. Like there needs to be some sort of strength portion to it.
Yeah,
but just yes, who's gonna put the handcuffs on? It's something that I wish we could figure out a better way to do it. But just 3 days a week. Actually, I think if you're in the training section, there should be some trainer there willing to work out with you 7 days a week, whatever. I mean, however they would need to figure it out, just to help work out with. Don't tell me how to work out with me. Like let's do it together. And again, I don't have the answer for it. A lot of people are short-staffed, but it's something that we got to, because that ties into mental health, your skills. Like you gain 100 pounds on the road, the way you shoot, the way you deal, the way you process, the way you sleep, the way you recover, all of that changes. And that has nothing to do, and that's with you getting older.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it affects the confidence you have to do your job. And I think we talked about this with Mo. That thing it's important because you want to be at your best to be able to perform at your best, right?
Yeah. For your safety, shit.
Not just for the public safety, but for your safety. And I take it a step further. I'm like, listen, if anybody calls for my help, and this is just how I operate in life, right? I usually don't enjoy large crowd, moments, whatever, because I'm always looking at obviously for the danger. But I'm like, we can't be in a space where it's like, someone's got to be overwatched, someone's got to be watching, someone's got to be the protector for the group, right?
Yeah.
And I just happen to take that role seriously. I don't want anybody that's around me to ever feel unsafe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, correct.
And that, and you kind of know when, especially there's some element. And again, this is not no kind of political thing, but as men, you are the protector of your household. You are the protector of, people when they're with you. And I never want people to feel like they're unsafe around me, especially in any kind of relationships or, kids around or whatever. It's like you always want to be, again, it's not like being overly macho. It's just, that's just the role that I think men should have. But at the same time, it's like, I think that take it a step above when you're doing this job, because now, like I said, people are calling you in their stressful moment. You need to be able to do something, whether it's, physically, do whatever, or, intellectually. You have to be, I guess you can say, like a step above to be able to do that.
Well, it even ties into when you get into those stressful environments, because you can't help it, man. Like your blood pressure is going to go up, your breath, the way you breathe and stuff is going to get increased, get rapid. And if you're vastly out of shape, which, let me explain, I probably am 80 pounds lighter than at my worst, and I was a cop at that time. I'd get out and chase somebody down. I was like, God damn, I'm about to have a heart attack myself. Shit. It hinders your confidence. It hinders your thinking ability, because your brain is like, trying to protect yourself, and you can't even handle what you're trying to do. So no, I think it all ties in, and I think it's one of those baseline foundations that, for whatever reason, a lot of agencies have gotten away from.
Yeah, I don't know what the overall answer is, because you can't force people to get in shape. You can't force people. And again, we've talked about a lot of these, I guess you would say, fitness for duty tests.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the standards are low, right? But the standards are broad, and I get why they are that way. If you have it so high, you never have anybody to work, right? But it can't be so low that it's impractical. So most of them are practical in a sense of what you should be able to do, right?
Yeah.
But again, some of the stuff is like not under, and in being in some stressful situations myself, it's like, okay. You look back at it and you're like, man, I wasn't able to think about this, and you have to be able to think, not necessarily just react. And I think that's the difference in being necessarily just physically fit, right? Where it's like, oh, you're like, yeah, I ran a marathon and I did this, and yeah, that's all I different guys. Like, but this comes into, again, a step above, a notch above. It's like, I mean, we talked about this. I do the box stuff too, but it's like, okay, I got to be able to also think while being in the suit and being under stress, and it's hot and it's this, and it's nerve-wracking, because if I get this wrong, this shit could literally blow up in my face, right? Or you're chasing somebody and now you have to go back and write the report. Hey, what'd you see? Hey, now you have to articulate everything that was happening. So you have to be able to think as well as perform. And we spoke about it before. It's like, you and I both play college ball. There's nothing more difficult than, hey, you're on this 80-yard drive and, it's been 7 minutes and you haven't had a break yet. Hey, now you got to remember every play, what you do, what the guy next to you does, what's supposed to happen, and the snap count, and it's loud. And, what I mean? It's like, to be able to do that, you got to be in some sort of, I think, accelerated shape, not necessarily just physically, but also cognitively as well.
Yeah. And also, I don't want to come off we shit on people that just run all the time. That's because we're big guys. But like you said, Shiro, he's a runner. He was probably the best. He's a cop's cop. He's a cop's cop. And probably one of the best supervisors / teachers / instructors that I've ever come across. I mean, I could call him today. I haven't talked to the guy in 10 years, and he'd be like, what is best in life? And, we would just start like, he remembers you. It's hard to express that. I'd love to get him on the podcast, though. Maybe at some point. He's got a lot going on.
But you remember the time he told us he spoke Latvian?
Yes, correct.
He hadn't spoken since college.
Renaissance man, bro. He was over doing an interview in Latvian.
It's just still so crazy to me.
Yeah, just wild. But again, he's a big time runner, but he didn't hold it against anybody. You know what I mean? It's a mentality, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to bring up one last thing before we let you go, because it popped up. They showed that in New York, aggravated assault, violent crimes has gone up like 145% in the last year. Now, I would say that's more policies that the state of New York has, which it's funny to me because I've now been through 5 different agencies, a lot of training academies, all this stuff. And every academy, they'd say, hey, look, this is how we do law enforcement. These are your rights. This is how you process a criminal. And he goes, except for New York. Anybody go to New York? Yeah, y'all have your own thing. You have to figure it out when you get there because they're crazy. And that has been through every academy I've ever been in. And they're not wrong. It's completely different over there, how they handle criminals, how they treat cops. I mean, for one of the largest, I think it is the largest, it's either between them or LA. They have the most law enforcement officers, deputies, officers in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll get treated almost like they're the enemy. So that you see this increase in specific types of crimes in these areas, but have you seen any type of uptick in specific types of crimes? It doesn't necessarily have to be violent, but what have you been seeing?
I don't know. I think your uptake has been a lot, I guess, white collar, a lot more fraud, a lot more scamming. Because, you're not necessarily, I guess, for the criminal, you're not necessarily putting yourself in immediate physical danger. Right. It takes a lot more time to, I guess, figure out who's doing what and, navigate that from an investigative process. But even just kind of where I'm at, I was just telling somebody about this probably beginning of last year. I was like, I've seen a lot more uptick in shootings, which is strange. Again, obviously in this job, a lot of stuff that happens doesn't hit the news. So I mean, your normal person would think, the stuff's not happening, but it's happening every day, if not every other day, where, the shooting over here, shooting over here, shooting in this one. And like, the shootings have brought up, in my opinion, and the white collar stuff, especially the fraud and the scamming. But I mean, one thing that, I don't know if it's necessarily not being reported, but you do see a lot of like the juveniles, and they're not necessarily stealing the cars per se. I mean, they're going to steal some of the high-end ones like that. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Atlanta. I mean, they're rampant with stealing the Hellcats and stealing cars and stuff like that, just because of, I don't know if it's a popular car, easy to steal or whatever, but we're seeing a lot more uptake in just trying door handles. Right, because it's easy. Most people don't even know that it's happening until the next day after the fact, if they notice it at all. And it's easy about confronting people not breaking it. So I'm not necessarily seeing a lot of necessarily like home burglaries, but the vehicle burglaries is, most of those are not necessarily smashing the windows like felony lane type stuff, but unlike door handles, man, they're just going around neighborhoods trying door handles. They get in, they get out. It's difficult to catch that in the moment, right? You can always, this is a reactive job. So, at some point you're going to find out, a fingerprint here, a DNA swab here, that kind of stuff. But it is, but the shootings is the one that is alarming to me.
Yeah. So that, the violence, again, I saw that mostly when I was with the Secret Service, with protests and stuff, and the level of violence that they were ready to take on. Again, it's like they just have no regard for their own safety or the safety of those around them, and all that to just get a political point across. But I will tap into the fraud stuff because that was something that until I got to the federal side, I wasn't really aware. I mean, I was aware it happened, but I didn't realize the scale. And I mean, it's coming from Russia, China, everywhere. But the one that I saw with my own eyes and was shocked to see, and you see it on social media sometimes where they're hacking scammers or whatever. You got these people that'll hack scammers and blow up the call center. Or blow it up, meaning like blow up their spot, not blow it up.
Yeah.
But we went to go do a bunch of arrests over in Nigeria, and we're like setting up and doing surveillance. I'm like, well, where's this going on? They're like, right here. And I'm like, that's like a corporate building. Like, yeah, that's the call center. That's where these guys are coming in like shirts and ties and like a name badge. They scan in, they get in, and then they sit it down at a computer desk and they just start scamming Americans. And that's the, hey, we're worth, whatever agency. And if you don't send us, $1,000 in Nike gift cards, we're going to come arrest you. or scamming, the elderly on Facebook, whatever, saying, hey, we got little Timmy, you need to send 5,000, that kind of stuff. And then the red night scams have just gone off the rails. This 80-something-year-old guy's like, oh, this 19-year-old girl wants to holler at me. She just needs to get her green card. I need to send her $100,000. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year through those types of scams. It's an actual business.
Right.
It's wild, bro.
Not to interject, but some of these scams, bro, I'm just like, I don't understand how you're falling for this. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it wasn't working, they wouldn't be doing it. So
hundreds of billions, bro. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars being perpetrated through these scam call centers and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I get it. I mean, even just some of the stuff we've talked about over the years and some of the cases, just seeing some of the stuff, you're like, not that I would do it, but I get it. I get why. It's like, I get why they're doing it. I get why they're taking the risk. I mean, the risk to reward is, I mean, you got people making millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they never have to leave their home, or they're not walking into banks and robbing banks. They don't have to.
Oh, they don't need to. You get more money doing it this way anyway.
Yeah, it's quite wild.
Yeah, man. All right, bro. Well, that puts us at an hour. You got anything you want to leave with?
No, man, it was good to see you, brother. It was good to see you. Or for the holiday, good to see the kids. And
damn right.
Now, probably big, Rob. So impressed with Alec in this transition in just a short time. But it's great to see. Man, he's big now, and just to hear their own people now, and it's wild, bro. Remember them from when they were just, as I was saying, knee high to a duck, to now it's crazy, man.
Yeah, no, they get their own dreams and hopes and ambitions now.
Wild.
I love it. No, it was good to see you too, brother. All right, man. Well, I'll catch you on the next one.